So what happened to 343 Guilty Spark after Halo 3? Well, after Halo 3's extremely controversial ending, we as the Master Chief finish off 343 Guilty Spark as he betrays and kills Johnson. But after this point, we never really hear from him again unless you've read the books. So if you don't read the books, you're not going to know what's happened to him, and a lot of people in the community since Halo 3 that are not familiar with the novels or the books that have come out wonder what happened to him and where his story has gone. Is it finished or does it carry on in some capacity? And today we're going to tell you exactly that in today's lore cap video. Now, this will be more of a high-level explanation of what happened to 343 Guilty Spark after Halo 3. This won't be fully going into details because we will be here all day if I was doing that. If you guys do want a more in-depth, full breakdown of exactly what happened step by step, then do let me know in the comments down below. But I do think this video will give you enough information on lore to be able to understand exactly what happened. But leave a like if you go on to enjoy, subscribe if you're brand new to the channel as well. But yeah, let's get into it. So, you know the ending of Halo 3 where we destroy Spark, or what we believe as we destroyed Spark, with a Spartan laser after he'd killed Johnson? Well, it turns out that he wasn't actually fully destroyed. In late November 2553, the UNSC detected a transmission from the ruins of Installation 00, which would be the Ark, and deployed the UNSC Rubicon, which was a fleet at the time, to conduct a further investigation. The UNSC Rubicon recovered an extremely damaged armature, believed by the team to be the source of the signal. The device was actually the broken, barely active debris of 343 Guilty Spark. Now, the reason why 343 Guilty Spark was on Installation 00, or the Ark, at the end of Halo 3 was because Installation 08, which was the new ring that was being created in replacement for Installation 04 that was essentially destroyed at the end of Halo Combat Evolved, was of course destroyed and activated by the Chief and the Arbiter towards the end of the game. So once it was completely destroyed, 343 Guilty Spark of course fell onto the Ark, and that's where he was recovered. Once Spark was obtained, the UNSC Rubicon properly calibrated their AI translator, and the human team began to interrogate Spark, hoping to gain some insight into some ancient human-forerunner relations and the Didact. Spark, acknowledging the humans as true reclaimers, proceeds to describe the events that led to his former human self becoming a monitor. Again guys, as I mentioned at the start of the video, if you want a full in-depth lore video on Chakass or 343 Guilty Spark, do let me know down below. This is very high level as I mentioned, so I will be skipping over quite a lot of points. As a result of the extensive damage that Spark had sustained, his memory was heavily splintered and barely functional at the time. For example, he was unable to remember many of the preceding events, only learning of his recent interactions with humans after tapping into their records. Spark explained that his mind had fragmented into a number of different identities over time, and the incarnation previously encountered by the UNSC was merely one of his many selves. After Spark had finished his story and the interrogation was over, he essentially powered down his robotic shell and was jettisoned into space by order of the only team commander. Before this, however, he had successfully managed to upload his data stream into the ship's computers, disabled its AI named Curator, and took full control of the vessel, having come to the conclusion that the Librarian was alive as a result of a long study and that he had need for the ship and its crew. Spark put all of the crew to sleep and set course to where he believed that the Librarian could be found. Spark first attempted to take the UNSC Rubicon to the shield world known as Etron Harborage, to get an upgrade seed to better help prepare the ship for the journey ahead, unaware that the shield world had been destroyed in 2031 by the UNSC Spirit of Fire. However, there were complications following Spark taking control of the Rubicon, and the ship actually crashed onto a planet named Juranos A. Spark managed to survive, however the crew all died in the crash. Spark buried the crew in a mass grave and sent out a distress signal and their location. Now that the introduction of how Spark got to where he is at the moment, this is where it gets a bit more interesting. Now, a ship called the Ace of Spades, who was led by Ryan Forge, had actually picked up on this distress signal, and that's where they had met Guilty Spark. A short time later in the story, after they had met, introduced themselves, and they both know each other's motivations, 343 Guilty Spark wanted the Ace of Spades to take him to Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, at this time, Oni were after Spark, and they wanted to know where he was. They wanted to capture and interrogate Spark for everything he knew about the Forerunners, and also the Didact. Now, when the Ace of Spades and Spark actually got to Mount Kilimanjaro, they entered a hard light beam beneath it, and awakened a personality imprint of the Librarian, which was stored within. The Librarian called Spark to appear as he did when he was Chakass and addressed him by his human name. The Librarian expressed sorrow for the pain that she had caused her old friend and told him that Spark was a singular marvel, a being that had adapted and evolved on its own, a product of necessity, but one that may have a great impact on things to come. The Librarian briefly told Spark of the awakening of her imprint on Requiem, as well as that of the Didact, but did not elaborate any further after that, though Spark realised from her reaction that the Didact's threat was not worrisome. The Librarian recognised that there were two sides within Spark, one that didn't care and was cold and scheming, whilst the other cared with all heart. Now, the one that we seen at the end of Halo 3 was the one that was cold and scheming, and then obviously the other one is where Chakass comes into things. The Librarian stated that she would go to join her other personality imprints at the Absolute Record. This is a piece of technology which essentially tells the Ancillas that are guarding it where all of the Forerunner technology in existence is held, and this can be activated with something called the Janus Key. The Librarian offered Spark a choice, to remain with his friends on the Ace of Spades or to go with her to the Absolute Record. The Librarian gave Spark a small etched box that she called a key for if he chose to remain, and instructed that he finds what's missing, fix the path, right what my kind has turned wrong. After the Librarian admitted that the Didact was most likely beyond redemption, Spark announced his decision to stay with the friends that he had met on the Ace of Spades, and then later promised the Librarian that he would meet her before she departed for the Absolute Record. As she left, the Librarian communicated with Ryan, who was the leader of the Ace of Spades. The Librarian instructed Ryan to take care of Spark, who is more fragile and important than she could ever know. This gets me really interested here. The Librarian knows that essentially Spark is extremely precious and important. I'm thinking maybe he could be coming back in some proper main game lore in DLC, so listen to the next part because this is really interesting as well. Upon emerging from the hard light beam, Spark shifted his shell into a combat configuration with a hard light rifle which Spark used to bring down the roof of the cavern and force the Spartans to retreat. Spark led the crew onto the platform where the Librarian's pod had been, which also acted as a translocation pad, and teleported everyone to safety outside of where Spark was able to remote pilot the Ace of Spades to pick them up and cloak them from the only military detection. So as of right now, 343 Guilty Spark is still alive and is essentially the shipboard AI aboard the Ace of Spades, with essentially Orion being the captain of that ship. The Ace of Spades are currently in the search of the Spirit of Fire. Ryan Forge wants to essentially rekindle with the Spirit of Fire, where they have Captain Cutter, Red Team, and then of course all of the other crew members aboard as well. So we know the Spirit of Fire is in the Ark or Installation 00 at the moment with no slip space drive, so they can't move around and do what they need to do. So however, this doesn't exactly go to plan. Now, it was a decision across the entirety of the crew of the Ace of Spades to ditch Ryan's plan to try and look for and find the Spirit of Fire, and instead they wanted to try and help Guilty Spark find himself and his overall purpose in the universe. This would later involve meeting up with the Librarian on Earth and actually travelling to Zeta Halo, where the 343 Guilty Spark was essentially turned into an Ancilla on the back of his human self, Chakass. Again, as I mentioned previously, there's a lot of lore involved with this, and it will take a long time to go into everything, so if you guys do want a more detailed breakdown of this type of lore and around Guilty Spark and Chakass, do let me know in the comments. However, once he finds out exactly what it is that he set out to look for and is resolving his personal trauma, as people would say, the Librarian actually offers him an opportunity of a lifetime. She offers Guilty Spark to be the monitor of Bastion. Now, Bastion was a world that essentially we were told about but never shown within Halo 5, and to be honest, we've never really seen Bastion as such. I think we've maybe had one or two screenshots of the planet in general, but as a high level summary of Bastion, Bastion is essentially, if you can picture what Earth is right now, but it's essentially the perfect version of the world that we live on right now. That is what Bastion is. This world will essentially be used to reseed some of the life that was destroyed previously by the Forerunners, and it's like a final act of goodwill from them. So right now, at the moment, 343 Guilty Spark is in fact the monitor on Bastion, which is the world that the Librarian had essentially created, in her home world, if you want to put it in that way as well. So it's very open. 343 Guilty Spark is still alive, and if Bastion is still canonized in Halo Infinite's DLC somehow, we could see him return if we ever go to Bastion, or if Zeta Halo is slipspace portaled to Bastion, we might actually see Guilty Spark come into Halo again. Very mixed emotions when seeing him, as he's killed and murdered our boy in Halo 3. But yeah, it would be cool to bring back characters like him, because he's been there since Halo Combat Evolved, and we haven't seen him since Halo 3. So it would be very interesting to have someone like that back. But guys, let me know your thoughts down below. It's very, very interesting. And for a lot of people out there that didn't know what happened to the Guilty Spark, he is still alive. And yeah, it's definitely something very, very interesting. Leave a like, guys, if you did enjoy. Subscribe if you are brand new for more content coming pretty much every other day on the channel. Take care, guys, and speak soon.